Welcome for some more affordable fixed blade content. Also the end of a three-part series that started with, well, not a fixed blade, but the Cold Steel Finn Wolf Scandi ground folder. And when I made the video, I had trouble keeping the name straight because Cold Steel has a Finn Wolf, they have a Finn Hawk, and they have a Finn Bear. We've looked at two of the three already. One's a folder, the other two are fixed blade knives, and very affordable fixed blade knives. But the last one, the Finn Bear, breaks the trend in not being a Scandi ground knife. This one is actually hollow ground. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? How does it compare to the other ones? And we also have to talk about, well, some of the other aspects of the design, good or bad. And as I promised, I'm going to end the series by telling you which one of the three I like the best, use the most. Well, let's take a look at the Bear. As usual, let's start with the sheath. Like other Cold Steel light knives, it comes in a one-piece polymer that they describe as being a Securex, which implies this is a glass-filled material, like that's somehow a good idea. But this does have just enough breathing room that my edge isn't actively rubbing against whatever this is made out of. Comes with the integrated belt clip that is generous enough for a standard size belt with ample retention hooks so it's not going anywhere accidentally. Drilled at the bottom for drainage for outdoor use. But my issues with this design, well, one is how rigidly vertical this holds the knife to my belt. In other words, it doesn't move with me. And when these get to be a certain length, that gets in my way and I have to figure out other ways to carry them, and we'll talk about that later. But the biggest issues by far, you've got this rigid belt clip sitting flat up against the side of the knife for pretty much its entire exposed length. That means I cannot get my fingers around it to get a proper grip to draw it. Just a little pinch. And that's made worse by how much of the grip is down inside the sheath, which I can see is excellent for retention and protection, but it only leaves me well enough to get, part of my hand on here very awkwardly, and it's just problematic. Now, harken back to the review I did of the Hawk. Talked about how I rather immediately cut away more than an inch of that material so I could at least get 4 fingers on it. The Hawk also has the benefit of this hook at the end of the grip. Catches my hand, gives me more purchase, allows me to, well, deploy it without nearly so much of a struggle. But I've had the Hawk for about a month now. I've had the Bear for, well, about 4.5 years, and you'll notice I haven't done anything to the sheath, and that might tell you something. All right, let's go ahead and get to where this knife really falls apart for me, and that is mostly at the friendly end. Compared to the previously reviewed Hawk, I really love this grip. The texture, grippiness, shape, ergonomics, yeah, feels great in hand, retains well. Doing a lot of different things, utility and martial, and I'm getting, well, none of that here for a couple of different reasons. But first, okay, the build. It is another one-piece polymer overmolding of, well, Cold Steel says it's a 2/3 to 3/4 length tang. Now, I have seen the blade without the tang, and it's pretty robust. It is drilled out to reduce weight, but I haven't had one of these builds fail on me yet, even under some pretty hard use. So I don't expect this one will either, but do I care? All right, where is my attitude coming from? Well, a couple of things. One is the grippiness or lack thereof. The texture looks like it's wrapped in some sort of insulated wire, but that's just cast in. But this one does not have a rubberized texture to it, an overcoating. And that doesn't make it very grippy, which is made worse for me by this straight taper that goes towards the blade. And then no guard here. When we get to martial handling, that's going to be straight up catastrophic. But in utility use, yeah, well, I'm going to add in the cross section, this teardrop shape. I think I know why they did it. It was for edge indexing, especially since the back of it's so round. but in my hands, it just doesn't feel right. It's just not working for me. Now it does have, well, a reasonable transition. There's a bit of a corner there to get my thumb up on the back of it. So there's that. There's no lanyard hole or anything like that. The dimensions, okay, actually very similar in certain ways to the Hawk. So you've got a 4.5-inch grip. It's 11.5 centimeters. Width there, like they said, there's a taper which goes from about 1 inch at the top to 1 1/8 inch, so about 2.5 centimeters to about 3. And the thickness, well, at the top it's about 18.5 millimeters down up to about 20 at the pommel. And yeah, we'll be talking about this again when it comes to handling and performance, but let's move on to the blade. All right, so Mike hates the grip, but what about the rest of the build and the blade? Let's start with value for the money. Now, I don't know how much I paid for this 4.5 years ago, don't remember, but currently on Amazon, it's going for around $19 US, which is $1 or $2 cheaper than the Hawk right now. But shop around because prices do flex. Also, it's lighter than the Hawk. The Hawk was surprisingly light at 3.2 ounces. And this one is 2.8, 79 grams. Now, you are getting that 4116 Krupp stainless steel in the blade, but, okay, the other knives we've been looking at with that steel, HRC is floating slightly above 60, whereas on this one, it's more like 57, which is exactly what Cold Steel says it's supposed to be. Why did they decide to do that? Were they worried about any brittleness depending on how you're going to use it? Did they want it to be easier to sharpen in the field and sacrificing potentially edge retention in the process? I don't know. We'll see how it performs. But other similar dimensions. Okay, like the Hawk, you're talking about an overall length of 8 3/4 inches, 22 centimeters with a 4-inch, 10 centimeter blade. Even though the profiles of the blades are different, we'll talk about the edges in a second, there is more taper to the Bear, but at the base it's the same width as the Hawk at 7/8 of an inch, 2.3 centimeters, and the same steel stock thickness, which is 2.5 millimeters. But, okay, the other two fins are Scandi ground, and for whatever reason the Bear is not. Now, I don't know what the current iteration is. This, again, is a 4.5-year-old knife, but mine looks like a saber ground, but it is slightly hollow ground. And again, we'll see how it performs here in just a second. But I'm going to say that the overall finish of the blade itself it's not the best. It is kind of muddy, but at least they made a crisp spine that is more than capable of striking sparks off a ferro rod. Let's go ahead and see how it performs. Pell test, Fin Bear. All right, the only conceivable way I can think of doing this safely is reverse grip with my thumb locked on it. Yeah, that is not even secure at all. Fin Bear, straight into the... No, I'm not even going to try it. All right, let's try the bamboo test with the Bear. Got to admit, it's one of the few things that did better than the Hawk. Fin Bear. Oh man, it's not nearly as nice a bite as my Scandi knives, or actually pretty much any other knife I've tested. It's not just the grip. Not just the grip. Yeah, go side by side with the Hawk, and it's, oh my god, it's just night and day. There is no comparison. That's kind of depressing. All right, don't expect a 2.8 ounce knife to be able to chop, but let's give this one a try. Huh. Feels really weird in my hands. A lot of hot spots on that front edge of the grip. It's not comfortable. Got a little bit of bite though. Compared to the Hawk, hawk feels better in hand, has a little bit more bite in. Either one are terribly good choppers. Let's try batoning. I kind of split there at the end. Let's try it again. Twist in my hand. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of shock in that grip. I mean, it's doing it. Well, doesn't feel real good doing it. Same piece of wood with the hawk. Right there. Right there. Yeah, that was a lot cleaner and a lot better than that one. Save the edge test until after all the hard stuff, so here it is. Well, at that point, at least it didn't take any damage in the edge test. And it is paper slicey, but it is toothy. Alright, side by side against the hawk, which did take edge damage in the bamboo test. And there are a couple snags in there. Yeah, a couple snags in there. Alright, let's move on to the cardboard. Start with the bear. And yeah, I've used it for this, but it's not, it's usable, but it's not great. It's okay. Alright, compared to one mangled finhawk. Oh man, yeah, there's just no comparison. There's your winner. Summary test results. A lot of it went as expected. There were a few pleasant surprises, but overall, yeah, pretty depressing. Especially since I did a lot of the tests side by side with the hawk. Now, some background though. As I mentioned, I got this knife about 4-ish years ago, and that was during a time when I wasn't spending any time outdoors. I was working, my life away in an office. So, like my Pendleton Light Hunter, went in the kitchen drawer, consigned to food prep duty, but yeah, I didn't do very well or feel very well. It's not a great slicey tool for that. So it went out into my workshop, and I figured I'd consign it to some of the heavier use tasks that, didn't want to put any of the knives I was more fond of to, but even then, yeah, I did a couple of rough things, some gunky jobs, but otherwise didn't get a whole lot of use. So this is really the first time I'm taking it out to give it a serious evaluation. And, all right, so the first test is the most martial thrusting and stabbing into my Pell, which is multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper bag paper backed up against my redwood target. The only way I felt comfortable gripping it for safety was in the reverse grip, edge away from me with my thumb locked over the butt cap. And even then, yeah, it was threatening not to stay put. Wasn't willing to try it any other way, and that included the next test, which would have been thrusting directly into the redwood target to see how it behaved under even heavier impact. Yeah, I'm not totally crazy. But when I did get it into the Pell media, penetration was pretty impressive, so I have to give it that. But the grip is absolutely not suited for that. Do not try this at home. We'll talk about that again in Marshall. But, all right, the next test, speaking of abuse, bamboo test, hacking and slashing into a piece of dry bamboo to see if I can induce chip or roll on a fragile edge. And I have to say, it did just fine. It's probably the best test results. And I think that may be because of the hardness of the steel. And yeah, it does have a secondary edge bevel on that hollow grind. I think Cold Steel was designing this for toughness, to take abuse, but not be a fine tool. And that was certainly reflected in further testing. Fine carving. Yeah, I could use it, but it was not comfortable in hand, even though I can get my thumb back on the back of it, but yeah, especially comparing it side by side with the Hawk, which is a razor blade in fine carving, this started feeling a bit more like a butter knife. It could do the job, but it wasn't great at it. Speaking of which, going a little bit harder and making some curls in some, okay, I'm using dry ash branches, which is a pretty hard wood. And it can do it, but yeah, I had to use a lot of force. And again, times it felt like I was using a butter knife, and you know, taking out the Hawk, doing the same thing, really sort of humiliated this knife. Chopping, it's just too light, doesn't get much bite into the wood. But then batoning, you can do it. You can do it. It got through the branch. There are some give and take issues with these side by side. I mean, that's a much keener edge, but the edge geometry sometimes gets stuck in the media, where this one didn't so much. So not as keen. Maybe I can improve the edge on it by doing, well, a more aggressive reprofiling. I might consider that. But one of the things that really went wrong in the batoning was this front corner-ish thing of the grip shape bit back into my hand under impact really severely, made me not want to do that. So yeah, I think the grip geometry was just, frankly, kind of a mistake. Let's get to the Marshall. All right, time out. Glimmer of light in this darkness and gloom. One of the tests I forgot to mention is I did go ahead and try to throw the thing. And it did okay. Obviously, I wasn't terribly worried about it taking damage, and it didn't. So, can you use it as a throwing knife? Yeah, it's a little light, the balance is a little weird, and it has a little twist in the throw, but managed to make it work. And yeah, it's not a knife I would be concerned about taking any damage doing something like that with. All right, down to the unflattering waistline view to talk about carry and deployment, which, well, deployment is always going to be a struggle unless I do something about that sheath. Carry, though, I've already mentioned with these rigid belt clip one-piece sheaths, they clip onto my belt and then they sit there very rigidly in the vertical position. They do not move with me, and therefore they get in my way. So I will either shove them into my belt or waistband for cone carry style, or more often just clip them to my pants. And since they're pretty light, that works and moves with me just fine. I already mentioned this in the review of the Finn Hawk, but as I've been doing the reviews side by side, yeah, I've actually got them both clipped to the same pocket, and that actually works. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know this would normally be where I quote the wise words of Jorge Prina about what makes a good Marshall knife, but I'm going to have to derail the train. Because this is pretty much exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about features that would make a horrible choice for a Marshall tool. Not only don't you have a guard to keep your fingers from sliding up onto the blade, but you've got taper that heads towards that edge. So if I'm going to, well, get any impact going that way into any media whatsoever, the odds that it's going to push my hand straight up onto the edge is extreme. I'm not even willing to try it. As I mentioned, might I be able to lock my thumb in and use it like this in an absolute emergency? Maybe. Might I be able to make a slash with it in an emergency as sort of a get off me kind of a move? Yeah, but this knife, martially speaking, is a whole lot more of a danger to me. So I wanted to have the conversation to basically clarify not all knives are designed, cut out for, appropriate for Marshall application. But I also promised you some final comparisons across the Finn series. Obviously, except for something like the bamboo test, which it passed without taking any damage, and it does strike a ferro rod. Yeah, I just would have to say this out of the three is the clear loser. I don't know what they were thinking with this grip shape design, and the blade, it's okay, but it's far from impressive. We've looked at a lot of other affordable 4-inch blades and Cold Steel Light Series blades that perform so much better than this did. So this is off the board. And that leaves us with the Hawk and the Wolf. And they both have their positive points. Now, the Wolf is a bit smaller. It's actually a bit heavier. And of course, has the advantage of being a folder, and for me that's convenient because I can carry folders concealed and take them more places compared to fixed blades. So there's that. I have to carry fixed blades open carry in my area, so optics are super important. It's much more subtle to carry a folding knife, even a bright Play School toy kiddie pool blue one. So there's that. But as I mentioned in the review, yeah, there's certain advantages to the slimmer grip, but it's not comfortable. It's not grippy. So therefore, the clear winner for me is going to be the Finn Hawk. It's a fantastic utility tool, great blade, love the grip, and yeah, it's not bad at all as a Marshall tool either. All right, I do have some other knife reviews to get to that I've got stacking up. I've got sword reviews to get to. I've got lots of hawk and hatchet reviews to get to. Don't know what I'm going to get to next, but until then, thank you all as always for watching. Liking the video, subscribing to the channel, putting up with my madness, following my journey, adding to the conversation. If you have any questions about any of these knives, have different opinions on any of these knives, please, not only in the comments, but I'm also available to you on other online forums like Facebook. And I hope to see you back for, well, not sure yet.